My name is John Keith Beechy. That's B-E-E-C-H-Y. There are also Beechys that are B-E-A-C-H-Y. The B-E-A's are the Amish. The B-E-E's are the Mennonite or English, in case anybody wants to look that up in the future. There was a branch there somewhere. I am 82 at this point. March 21, 1940. Where am I from? I think I lived in a cave for a while, maybe. Actually, I was born in Ohio, Holmesville, Ohio. So in 1940, it was a unique time. It was a small town, and I still like small towns. I'm living in Tulsa, Oklahoma now. Well, I was born in my grandparents' house. Give their names. Robert C. Krosky, her name was Valley Thomas. Holmesville, a small town. Woods pretty much all around the town. A little swamp on one side. But in those days, when hunting season came in, you would hear gunshot all around town. Squirrel season, the men would be out shooting squirrel, looking for squirrel, and rabbit season would be another one, pheasant season. And as a kid, I was allowed to go on some of those hunts. So I was kind of familiar with guns. I'll talk about the military later on, but Holmesville was a unique place. Now, my dad came from Berlin, Ohio. That's good Amish country over there. They weren't Amish, or I don't know, they probably went to the Mennonite church, I don't know. Mom was from Holmesville. Well, my dad's dad was a school teacher in Berlin, and then over in Holmesville, he became superintendent of the high school over there. So they moved to Holmesville, Ohio, and that's where my mother lived. So they got together there. Lo and behold, I was born a little bit later. Dad was a cost accountant. You know, he went to business school, got out of business school, got a job over in Rittman, Ohio. I don't think it paid enough. I don't think he was satisfied with that, so he was looking for another job, and he got a good job in Angola, Indiana. So the family moved to Angola, Indiana, and that's where I ended up going to high school. Weatherhead Company. What's Weatherhead all about? They made parts for cars. I mean, small brass parts for carburetors and that kind of thing. It was at that time, it was the main business in town. And we moved to a nice area. We left a nice area, went to another nice area. Well, it was a very good childhood. And I had very good parents, by the way, and I had very good grandparents. Childhood in Holmesville, of course, there wasn't much to do. It depends on, you know, we moved from one place to another. But as far as schooling is concerned, my first school was a one-room schoolhouse. Can you imagine? I think the first 6 grades were in there. Do you think I was a first grader? Do you think I learned anything as a first grader in that school? No. It was so crowded, Richie and I had to share a desk, okay? But we didn't have air conditioning back then, but we were sitting right near a door at the side of the school in that particular desk. Richie decided he didn't like school, so out he went. I don't know whether he ever came back or not. I think he did. But I looked around and, hey, where'd Richie go? He went out that way. So, you know, actually we lived we had a rent house in Sterling, Ohio, and I had a good buddy there, Jerry Rauschenberg. I remember one time there was a mill in town that sold fence posts, wooden fence posts. So I thought, and we had a creek out behind the house. Well, you go across the cow pasture and there was a creek out there. You know what, I'm gonna put together a raft and float down this creek. And I was just a little guy at that time, probably 4th or 5th grade. So I saved up 50 cents, went up to the mill and got one of these heavy wood fence posts, is what they are. Took it to the creek, kind of hid it in the brush in the creek. And as soon as I got another 50 cents, I went up there and probably got 6 or 8 of them. And I probably lashed those fence posts together. You know, I had high hopes, man, I'm gonna go for a ride here, you know. Well, I got it all together, and I think I even nailed some of it together, and it wouldn't float. The wood was green. I didn't take that into consideration at that young age. We moved into town to begin with, and then Dad and Mom wanted to buy a house in Angola, Indiana. So Dad went out there for the job. They rented, I think, for a year or two, and my sister and myself. By the way, there's 3 of us. I'm the oldest, I have a sister, and I have a younger brother. And they're all still alive and doing well. I had a friend that lived at the lake, and he had a racing boat. And he would take me out, and we'd rip around the lake. I'd sit in the front seat, you know, banging over all those waves. He had this hot rod motor on the back of his boat. So we moved to the lake, and Dad was able to get me one of those. So he and I, you know, we tore around the lake as best we could, had a lot of fun together. One time we were racing neck and neck, and we were going into the wind, and I saw his boat raise a little bit. It came down, my boat started to come up, and I leaned forward and got it down. Next thing you know, it went over backwards. Yeah, the boat made it, and so did the motor, believe it or not. When the motor, or the boat was the only thing left, you know, it didn't sink. Just the nose was sticking out of the water when it was, you know, when they came to tow it in. They laid the motor out on the concrete, dried all the parts out, put it back together, and I was going again. My friend that lived on the lake, and myself, and the fellow that owned the marina, we all went out there and set that course up. And there's a book in the at Potawatomi Inn on Lake James. That was Lake James in Indiana. And it's the history of Lake James. Believe it or not, I'm in there, you know, for setting up that race course. And then they took a picture of the people that were involved in the race. I was in that. Yeah, it's in the gift shop at Potawatomi Inn on Lake James. First date. I can't even remember who that was. But, you know, started dating probably at age 15, age 16, somewhere along in there. The girls, you know, started to become pretty important to me. So I had a few dates, but nothing seemed to click, you know. You go out on a date, maybe you go to the movie, or, yeah, we had 2 theaters in town. At that time, Angola's population was 6,000, but they did have 2 theaters. Go to the movie. If I had a car, you know, we'd go out to the drive-in, A&W drive-in, something like that, have a root beer, and talk, you know, get to know one another. So there was a few dates there. I can remember a couple of them, but nothing happened on the inside. I met my wife, Diane, who I've been married to her 63 years now. So my buddy, another buddy on the lake, said, I want to go in and talk to my girlfriend. So I hopped in his car. We went into Angola, went up to her house, knocked on the door. She came to the door. He started talking to her. This was in the midsummer now. You know, we were looking for things to do. Yeah, that would have to be about 1956. So she came to the door, and I thought, man, how can an ugly guy like that have such a beautiful girlfriend? So then there was a matchmaker after that. I told another friend in school that I liked Diane, and she told that same fella that she liked me, that sort of thing. So I met her one time. We had a sweet shop in town, you know, malts, and this was the 50s, you know, rock and roll 50s. And she was going to go to work at the sweet shop. And I had just left the sweet shop, and I met her on a corner. And oh boy. Sorry. Sorry. Anyway, I could see the positiveness in her eyes and her demeanor. I don't know what she saw in me, but anyway, that's where it started. It took a few dates, and we thought, you know what, we're compatible. And then I noticed one of your questions was, how did you pop the question to her? I didn't. I, I told her one time, I said, I'm one, you're one, I'd like to join together at some point. She was more or less agreeable. Anyways, that was the start, and it's been a good life. Married 1959, March 23rd. Okay, I got married while I was in the Army. Well, it was okay. I was in a tank battalion, 35th Armor, mostly Fort Hood, Texas. That was one of the that was a famous general. I can't think of his name right now, but that was his outfit in World War II. I didn't talk about my dad. My dad in Holmesville, World War II had started, okay, and most all the men, young men, wanted to go in and fight, you know, the Germans. So he wanted to go too. So he went into the Army and doing his thing. I think he was a Jeep driver or something like that. But anyways, they got ambushed by some Germans. He was got shot in the leg. They had to put him in a column, and they were marching him back, I don't know where, behind the German lines, you know. So Dad and another fella that he stayed friends with most of his life decided they didn't want to go. They asked the people up at the front of the line to make a big ruckus up there, and then they dove into a ditch at the back of the line. Problem is, 3 or 4 other guys did the same thing. So there's a bunch of guys in the ditch. You know, okay, how do we get back to the American lines? Well, they slept in barns during the day and traveled at night, you know, frozen feet, that sort of thing. There was mountains to get through. I think they were feeding them, yeah. They knew they were out there in the barn, but during the day you couldn't be out there walking around. There was too many enemy. But he made it back, and he was a good father. You know, I was able to have him my entire you know, life up to that point. By the way, I forgot to tell somebody in the future, in case they're looking up history as to where our group is from. We're mostly German, Swiss.
Your children's names?
Lynn, Chris, Kathy, and Andy.
How did becoming a parent change your life?
Well, it didn't change it a whole lot. It just made me more responsible. I thought, you know what? I got to get a good job. And I want to, you know, take care of my family, wife and family. So I asked Dad for some help, and he said, well, I think I can get you into computer school. Actually, it was before computers even. This was, I can't remember the year, probably 59, 60, somewhere along in there. Through Weatherhead, where he worked, he was able to send me to a IBM school. It was only a week of training. I came out of there completely confused. Over time, just because of that 1 week of training, I was able to get into that business. Worked at several different places, not too far from Angola, which happened to be the big city of Fort Wayne. So I worked at a few places there. I ran the tabulating machines before computers. There weren't any computers at first. And then when IBM started putting their business computers in different places, I was able to learn about the IBM computers. The last place I worked, which was probably the best job I ever had, was General Electric. I started out as a computer operator, ended up as a programmer. So that's how that went. Fort Wayne was a good place too. Our house backed up to the golf course, and Dad says, I want you to see this fellow. It was Ben Hogan. Of course, nobody knows who Ben Hogan is probably now, but I got to see him. That was fun. If anybody out there wants to have a lot of grandchildren, you better have a lot of kids first. That's the key. The more kids you have, the more grandchildren you'll probably have. So you, daughter number 2, have 3 children. Your older sister has 4, I think. Kathy lives across the state line here from Oklahoma. I don't know, she's adopted a couple of them. She's got 4. She adopted 4 and had one with her husband. Okay. So, you know, if you want some grandchildren, oh, Andy, my son, forgot about that. He's got a set of twins, twin girls. He lives up in Kansas City. Back in probably 1954, Dad wanted to take us on a trip out west. Dad and Mom wanted to take us out west. So he piled the kids in the back seat, and he had a new, so it must have been about 53 maybe, he had a new Buick, and off we went. No air conditioning, you know, no air conditioning. And man, it was hot. But we got to see a lot of things out west that I didn't know existed, neither did my sister and brother. But one outstanding night, we were traveling we ended up pretty close to Albuquerque, and there were no campgrounds. You know, we were camping, we weren't staying in motels. Oh boy, where are we going to stop and sleep? So finally Dad just pulled off the road, and we had a couple of cots in the trunk. So he said, let's you and I, talking to me, you and I take these cots and go out and we'll look at the stars, the beautiful stars, the Milky Way and all that thing. We did that, and we enjoyed that, looking at the sky and all that. But there was some strange aromas around us, you know. Sniff, sniff, what's that all about? Well, when we woke up the next morning, or we got up the next morning, we found out it was a city dump. It was, at that time, the city dump wasn't hidden someplace, it was along the highway. And, you know, there was fires coming up. And, you know, we thought it was pretty neat, you know. And, but we had a good night's sleep. The aroma wasn't too good. Gee, we saw some mountains, and we saw Bryce Canyon. We saw some Indian cliff dwellings. It was an eye-opener for me. And I've always been interested in the Indians anyhow. So, especially in Oklahoma here, I don't know how many tribes we have here. I think there's about 60 tribes in this state, and 5 civilized, which are around here. Cherokees are the big ones. Went to England, okay? Actually, we went to Europe, and on a tour bus. I had a real good lady that would point out the castles. Some of those old castles were something else. I remember going down in the one right there in London. We landed in London, started the whole tour, and went down to see the dungeons where they used to keep people that were naughty, how they prepared for war. Down there was horseshoers down there, and they were pounding on spears and shields and all this. That was quite interesting. So we toured. Not only did we tour London there, by the way, we went where the Queen lived there, Buckingham Palace. We went through Ireland, a couple other countries. Oh yeah, well, yeah, I like to restore cars. I'm kind of over that now, but I've always been a car person. Since high school, I had my first car at age 16. It was a convertible Ford of 1951, and I got a 52 convertible Ford, black, all black. The second one was maroon, and yes, I did do some drag racing with them, you know. Oh, family, jobs and family, mostly family. I mean, that's you know, working with my wife. You know, she helped me and a lot. I helped her. I found out I didn't know everything. She knew a few things too. So we relied on each other. It's our background, our parents' work, grandparents' work. It's kind of the way, you know, we thought we were going to have to work when we grew up, and we did. I need to start from the beginning and then jump around a little bit. When we set up housekeeping in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that's where I got my first computer job. We had a little 2-bedroom house, and you were in it, and your sister was in it, and you had your own bedroom. I had some depression problems then, probably still do. You know, I didn't advance as fast as I thought I should have, you know, and Diane, my wife, started going to church right up the street. It was a United Missionary Church, I think. She just, you know, she was worried about me, and because I wasn't getting any better. So she started going to church, and I didn't. But I didn't believe in God. I started going to church once in a while, okay, and they had an altar call. And you know, I thought to myself, I'm gonna go down there, go down front, the altar, and accept Christ as my personal Savior, like they told me to do. And if I don't feel anything, I'm going to turn around, walk out of here, and never come back. Well, I had a beautiful experience. I felt the power of God, I think, because it just kind of just went like this through my whole body, you know. That was a turning point. I rely on God now, Jesus Christ, and I always, usually when there's any major decision to be made, I always look inward first. The brain gets involved second. But I do that more now than I ever did. Over little things, I'll look inward first, you know. So the church, which I've been in many kinds, independence. We had a nice independent church in Fort Wayne there, big church. But we enjoyed it. And she was teaching a Sunday school class, and I was in the choir, things like that, you know.
What was the name of the church?
Calvary Temple. The churches were changing at that time. There was something, there was a big movement of God. People were getting healed.
Catherine Kuhlman came out there.
Yes, she did. Catherine Kuhlman. Yeah, miracles there. Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship. I joined that. That was going. But there was a whole different way of looking at church, and I think it was a Holy Ghost revival, if I might say that, because we you know, the old churches were dull, and in my opinion, you know, I couldn't get anything out of them, and very conservative. All of a sudden, everything turned loose, and we were right in the middle of it. And we enjoyed that run. Joyous, fulfilling times. That would be, you know, living on the lake was a happy time. Friends on the lake. It was beautiful scenery. When wife and I went into business, we moved to Wichita. That was an exciting time. Nearly turned around and went back to Fort Wayne. I was out on the Kansas prairie, and there were oil wells on both sides of the highway there, and some of them had some fire shooting. I suppose it was gas relief or something. And it was in the midst of winter, and I just bought a new van with no insulation in it. I was cold, going across that Kansas prairie. Almost turned back and went back where it was warm, back in Fort Wayne, but kept on going. And we started a business there. And I can't imagine what year that was. That had to be in the 70s. Early 70s, and you know what? It's still going. It's still going. It's had a couple different owners, but we did some good groundwork there. Still going. Yeah, there was one. It's hard to even talk about, but our son, his wife was carrying triplets, and they didn't make it to full term. It was horrible. We were all, they had names for them, all three triplets. So we went to the funeral, and we saw the triplets in a casket. It was awful. Everybody was crying. That would be the big downer. Later on, she got pregnant again, and they had twin girls. Those triplets are still represented out at City Zoo on a brick out there. They paid for that just in memory. Or Andy and his wife, they had to move on, you know. I want to talk about karma for a minute. Karma is something that what goes around comes around. If you do something to someone that's not good, you're going to get the same thing back. If you do something that's positive for somebody, you're going to have a positive reward somewhere. That's just the way life is. It goes around and comes around. So stay positive with, especially people that have jobs, you know. Try to get along with your supervisor or the person that's over you. Make a friend out of them. I just found out recently that works. I have a little part-time job that I work once in a while. But if you can make a friend out of your supervisor and the owner, and remember, they're paying your paycheck. So try to be positive on the job. I did that. Chase my dreams. I got out of the computer business and wanted to become rich, okay? So I looked around the humongous church crowd, and the people that were pretty wealthy were in business for themselves. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to get rich. I'm going to go into business for myself. And by the way, I'm still waiting to get rich. Let me say that. But that's when we went into business, and the business is still going. Well, be forgiving of your mate. If you will have some tough times with your mate, forgive them, try to work it out. If you're really in love with somebody, it'll get worked out. Yeah, but you pretty much have to be in love. And you'll do anything for your mate if you're in love. And I was in love. And I think she was in love. I know she was. I'm just kind of being kind of funny. A lot of things can be, love is a big thing. And that's the way we kept the marriage together. And a good life. It hasn't been all peaches and cream. It's been up and down a little bit, but I'm most grateful for family and a good wife, a partner, I should say.
What are your dreams today?
Take a nap after this is over. Yeah, there is. I do. There is. Yeah, I have one thing in my bucket list. I'd like to go to Fort Myers, Florida. Been to Florida several times, but I'd like to go down and spend the winter in Fort Myers, Florida. Ancestors go, Fort Myers. A lot of the Amish people go down there. I'm told it's a beautiful place. Henry Ford had a place down there, and so did Edison. Of course, it's not too beautiful right now because it's just been hit by a horrible hurricane, flattened a big part of Fort Myers. Yeah, Dad and Mom split up after us kids left home, and Dad went to Florida. Eventually, Mom went to Florida too, but so he married another woman, and so he's buried down there. I'm still learning things. I believe in reincarnation. We're here in Earth School right now, going through these positives and negatives. I've been around before, and after I pass, I'll come around again. I'll have to get before the Life Review Committee and do that. I might rest on the other side a little bit. But I'll be back. I'm sure I got a lot of things to work out yet. Earth is a unique place. It's a place where you can work out some of these things that eventually, after you get them all worked out, you're one with God, and you don't come back. But I'll be back. And this time around, it's been a good life. There's been some downturns, but mostly up. Got a good family, nice home. I made a couple notes. Let me see if there's anything else I'd like to tell somebody in the future. I already talked about that still small voice. You're going to come to many crossroads in your life. Always check inside first. It'll be a small, still voice. It's very hard to hear. You're going to make some bad decisions. In due time, you'll make the right decision. If you made a bad decision, you'll know it before too long because it'll be hard. Okay? Marriage. I already shared that I don't know it all. Be kind to your significant other and children. And when they're adults, when the children are adults, they'll keep coming around. I like for children to come around. Business success, I think I covered some of that. Make friends with your boss. Always give more than you get. Keep your nose clean, so to speak, and you get a job, work at it. You don't have to say, I'd like to have this job over here, or I'd like to have my supervisor's job. You will get recognized. You will get recognized, and somebody will say, that's a good employee, let's promote them or give them a raise or whatever. But And no murmuring. Try not to murmur. I'll tell you what, be kind to others. If you can get that kindness thing going genuinely, you'll have the world, world by the tail, so to speak. That's key. And always turn, I already covered this, always turn inward to see what your path might be. You'll know it when you see it. And you'll know it when you find the right mate, too. There'll be a love connection. Oh, that's a little too far. Okay, that's more than just be kind to others. Grandparents in Holmesville, Ohio. Wedding in the military. It was a beautiful wedding. We had to walk through, they had a kind of a cathedral thing with swords up like this. We had to walk through that tunnel. And great wedding cake. High school, that's what I looked like in high school. Dad and Mom at Niagara Falls. This would happen to be my sister, my mother, and Diane, my wife. Well, this is our children when they were young. We lived in Wichita at the time when I started that business. That's our son holding Olivia, your daughter. This is one of my favorite cars. And this is Mom, myself, and wife. And this one up here, Lynn and Brian, your older sister's family. Kathy, your younger sister's family. Your family. My brother's even in there with his wife. But you can't see the picture very good. So I don't know if I've helped anybody or not, but I'd like to. But I'll say this, after all these years of living life, 82 now, I'm still a church person, and we've recently, you can go use the internet now to go to church if you want to. So we go to Archbald, Ohio, the Mennonite church now, and it's just Diane has a lot of cousins that go there, and so we tune in every Sunday, and I still depend on God, and still a church person. Way back when I met God, I told you about it. I wanted to test to see if God was real. That changed my entire life, and I've been on the church side of things ever since. And I think our children have too. Well, it's so important. It's so important. Why go through this life with trying to figure it out for yourself? Get some help. Get some angels involved. I've had to do that. Send them on a mission. They don't have much to do anyhow. I've had to do that. And don't try to go through life just on your own. Ask for help. Help on the other side or in the other dimension, whatever you want to call it. Hope I helped somebody along the way.
Yeah, for sure, Dad. You did a great job.